Elon Musk created a Sputnik moment for FSD. He went to China and he's playing the Chinese versus the US regulators. Why is this important? There's three fundamental important things. Number one, the obvious one, which is Tesla wants to monetize the most advanced real world AI there is right now in the world, which is a self-driving car that is able to drive around pretty much unsupervised in almost any kind of setting. It's still not fully there, but I would say we're much further than I thought we would be at this point in time. The way they did it is they used behavioral cloning and end-to-end learning, and they solved the self-driving car problem by throwing a lot of data in a very structured way through a sophisticated data pipeline onto a sophisticated algorithm that is able to learn from that data how to drive. So this is the first thing. The second thing that Tesla wants to do is they want to create a Sputnik moment, and I think this is the most important news from this week. Musk flew to China. He spoke with the officials there, and he is opening up FSD for China, which will drive the evolution of self-driving technology in China. I'm going to elaborate why that's important, because some people might say, well, they already have it. Why does, Musk, why do they need Musk? I'm going to talk about all this. And I think third, there is an important factor, which is related to the second factor, that we believe there's a good chance that actually self-driving technology and robotaxis could proliferate in China first. And therefore, we don't just have a Sputnik moment here, but we have some sort of Manhattan project also that's happening, so the inverse Manhattan project, where we have a massive new technology in a massively new market, which is transport, that actually proliferates first in China and then everywhere else. This is not even on podcast. It's April 30th, 2024. This is Krim Telco. Since the last update, we're up about 8%. The market's flat for the year. We are down 12%. The market is up 7%. We're underperforming by 19%. The market's still open, so these things can change. We had a massive rally in Tesla yesterday. Today, there's a bit of a pullback, some bad news in the car market in general. But we think that this is phenomenal news, and the rally in the stock is warranted for those three reasons that I mentioned in the prelude. So let's start with the most important one, which is the Sputnik moment. What do we mean with that? The Sputnik moment is a metaphor used in Silicon Valley for a technology, for a push into a technology that might not have otherwise happened, but happens because one of your competitors is pushing for it. Sputnik was a satellite that was launched by the Soviets in the 50s, and it launched the US space program and culminated in the landing on the moon. So that's why Sputnik moment is used as a metaphor. Sometimes we hear, I mean, this is just normal, of course. Human behavior is we were entitled, we're a bit lazy, we waste our time with things that are culture wars and whatnot, and we don't focus on tech. We don't focus on delivering new technologies to improve the lives of everybody else. Eventually, the only democratic thing to do, really, the only real democratic thing, which is to bring more things to people at lower cost, which gives them more optionality and therefore makes their lives better off. The only thing that is really worth doing is delivering better technologies to solve problems in the real world. That's what Silicon Valley is doing mostly. That's what other areas of entrepreneurship are doing around the world, and that's also what Tesla is doing. Now, the Sputnik moment in FSD is that we have a reluctance in the West of applying full self-drive technology to transport. Some of it is maybe a bit of shyness, a bit of scare, a bit of unfamiliarity, and some of it is also opposition. Like there is the OEMs, the car industry that doesn't want to change. There are the regulators that don't want to give up their power that they have right now over traffic rules and all kinds of things. Because once we go fully FSD, a lot of things will change. Let's say traffic rules will become algorithmatized. You have a different road design. You have it's just disruptive technology because you can do a lot more things at a lot lower cost. We've spoken about the actual cost perspective, for example, cost per mile, cost per minute of driving several times, and this new technology, which allows robots to drive around and bring people from A to B, will enable a lot more driving at a lot lower cost. So why are people against it in the West? It's a mix of reluctance, entitlement, laziness, and also opposition. If I was an OEM, particularly a German OEM, meaning selling high-end cars, traditional cars to customers, I would be tooth and nail against the self-drive because that's where the market is going to crack first. Because if you're ready to pay between $50,000 and $100,000 for a car, you're also going to be very happy to pay, $10,000 more for a very highly functioning software technology. So you wanna distribute the merchant of doubt strategy around the world, which is, oh, we're not sure. We need to take this very slow. We need to be careful and all that kind of stuff, which is of course true. But this all implies that the FSD and the robot technology that Tesla has is not safer or not better, when in fact it is much, much safer and much better. Because again, it's algorithmatized, it anticipates problems, it sees problems. There's one issue that I've noticed after almost a month of FSD driving, which is there is a problem with very short range depth perception of the sensors. It's a sensor problem, it will be solved. But again, I mean, there are issues still. We're not fully over the hump here. But let's just remember that unfortunately we have over 30,000 deaths every year in the U.S. on the roads, and therefore traditional driving also is incredibly dangerous. And the other thing I wanted to mention on the opposition front is, of course, we have also opposition from the science community themselves. Companies like Waymo, a lot of scientists, a lot of roboticists are opposing the end-to-end learning paradigm because they've been working on other paradigms, whether it's symbolic logic, whether it's engineering solutions from sort of top down, from control theory, going back way to the 50s, where they're all kind of being now questioned because Tesla has solved this problem in a very different way. So this is reminiscent of the early days of deep learning when everybody was opposing it because, well, it's impossible to teach AI something based on just data alone without explicit knowledge. And then of course Jeff Hinton and Alex Nett showed differently. And we're still fighting that battle. And then again, you have also people like Waymo with legacy, using all kinds of sensors like LiDAR and things like that, and betting on those types of technologies because they go way back to DARPA, which was one of those examples when the government pushes something which is a bit too early, wasn't ready because vision wasn't ready for prime time, and therefore people had to solve the driving problem in a different way. And they did actually a good job. I mean, people like Sebastian Thrun and those people who participated in the DARPA challenge back in the early 2000s, they did phenomenal work, but they just weren't ready. It wasn't there. We didn't have the compute power and the neural nets and the algorithms that we have today and the solutions that help vision to solve the navigation problem. The second thing I want to talk about is now this sort of inverse Manhattan project, in a sense that we could also have the proliferation of FSD and robotaxi technology in China and then export that to the rest of the world. China has very specific traffic problems. China has a population of people who aren't as married to the car and the tradition of the car like we are here in the US or in Europe. So they're going to be much less reluctant to give up this concept of ownership, concept of freedom, having a car and all that kind of stuff, because what they really need is just to be able to transport from A to B, and that's what algorithmatized robots will do. I think I want to mention another thing which is important when it comes to China, and that is, I would say, a misconception that some people might think, well, the Chinese are already pretty far ahead in self-driving, so why do they need Tesla? And if you just look at a number of papers published and things like that in autonomous driving, I just work on a paper right now that came out in China, which is using mask autoencoders for navigation problems. So the Chinese are incredibly prolific when it comes to science, but they lack two things that I think Tesla has. One is they lack the entrepreneurship that is necessary, the big picture, taking a risk, large scale bets very early on to build an infrastructure that eventually will pay off. So while they're incredible entrepreneurs when it comes to all kinds of, the Chinese are the entrepreneurs of Southeast Asia, but that kind of, let's call it Silicon Valley style, big picture thinking, that's still, I would say, an American domain. So people like Bezos, back then Gates, and now Musk and others, Jobs, like to take big bets on technologies that might not be prime time today. Jensen Huang is actually probably the best. I shouldn't have mentioned him as last. He's probably on top of that list. He was investing in CUDA in the early 2000s or mid 2000s when Nvidia was just a gaming company, and he was investing back then hundreds of millions of dollars into something that back then just didn't. People were like, "Why is this important? Like, what is this?" And lo and behold, CUDA became the engine of AI today. Today he's investing in Omniverse, which is a similar engine for simulation, which in our opinion is necessary for robotics to get to the same level like self-driving is today, or even better. And those type of big picture views, Tesla, Musk took a very early on a big picture view that he needs to build a data pipeline and an infrastructure of distributed compute with different distributed inference engines in the car that can handle massive compute problems, because that's what's necessary to build a self-driving car fleet. Also at low cost. Let's not forget that. That's absolute key. The cost factor. That's, for example, why Tesla is way ahead of Waymo. It's not necessarily the technology itself. Waymo is probably all right. It's not that bad. I've never used one, but I'm sure it does the job in San Francisco and now I think in Phoenix or wherever they are. But it's just way too expensive. It doesn't pay. So what Tesla did is solve the self-driving problem at low cost, and that's key. So the Chinese are not there yet, but most importantly, there's no company that has the kind of data set and data infrastructure and data pipeline and algorithms that adapt to that data pipeline, which is crucial to have a functioning self-driving car technology. That's why we have all these companies, Baidu on top, but others like Li and Xpeng, and they're very good at making announcements. Oh, we have this, we have that. But then when it comes to actually delivering at low cost, at scale, they're just not there yet. So that's why they need Tesla. That's my point. That's why they need Tesla. And we believe that there could be an inverse Manhattan project where the Chinese actually make a big push into, maybe offering a few pilot cities first for either a robo taxi or at least unsupervised full self-driving experiments, and then go from there. Third, the last and most important thing for us investors is, of course, is when and how is Tesla going to monetize this? There's a couple of avenues. One is selling software on top of the car, which they're already doing. Then there's the halo effect that you have the software, you sell more cars. Then there's the licensing, which is of course huge because that adds to the margin with very little cost. So that's a kind of an AWS style business model, if you will, or licensing. Software licensing is an incredibly profitable business model because you license IP that you already built and invested in, and you license it to third parties that do all the investment and all the hardware stuff. Now, for Tesla, by the way, licensing FSD means two things. It means selling the software, but it also means selling the hardware, the infrastructure, which Musk has been touting several times now, that is a big upside, and we should take that very seriously. So there could be either an AWS style model of inference at scale for not just for self-driving, but for other use cases. And imagine if Tesla licenses this to other cars, and they have their own inference chips in let's say BYD and all kinds of other cars in China, and all of a sudden we have a fleet of tens of millions of cars using Tesla infrastructure, then we could see that becomes a massively distributed inference engine, which in itself could be very valuable. The other thing that Tesla could do in terms of monetizing, of course, is a robotaxi fleet. Uh, we're not necessarily betting on that as a fund. We don't think that that is necessary for Tesla to get to the trillions of market cap, but it's certainly an opportunity. And again, when we take that inverse Manhattan project concept that the Chinese most likely will launch, then we could see a success also on that front. I guess the best way to proceed for Tesla now is to do A/B testing, and that's something they can do in China, where they, in one city they do native FSD products, such as having unsupervised FSD, so you can drive to work, send your car back, so your wife can use it. In other city, they do mobile taxis. In the third city, they do a mix, then they do licensing. So they can try and test. And we believe China is a lot more open for that. Again, the main risk for that, of course, is that the regulators make it more difficult for Tesla to sell FSD in China. That's something that we will have to battle. And certainly, there is going to be opposition. If I was in DC now, a regulator, I would try to at least have a word here, because this is kind of getting out of my hands. So that's definitely a risk. So to summarize, the three main drivers of positivity for Tesla going to China with FSD is: number one, they can create a Sputnik moment. Number two, they can create an inverse Manhattan project moment for FSD. And third, they can monetize FSD faster and more